So the Red Sox were playing the Cardinals over the weekend. Cardinals are now generally managed by Chaim Bloom. And there were some comments from, the ESPN crew about how the things that Chaim Bloom is trying to build in St. Louis is on display in Boston right now. And it brings up the question again. Like, did Chaim Bloom get a raw deal with the Red Sox? And this happens all the time where, the fruits of the other GM's labor kind of comes to fruition. Everyone said for years about 2004 that was Dan Duquette's team. It was Dan Duquette's guys that were coming together. And I thought that was a little ridiculous. Like, Dan Duquette was a good GM, and he did have, Pedro in a trade. That was one of the great trades in Red Sox history. Manny as a free agent, these kind of guys. But Theo brings in Curt Schilling in kind of a bold trade. He brings in the closer they sorely lacked the year before, Keith Folk. He does a really ballsy trade, trades Nomar, signed this guy off the street called David Ortiz. That was pretty influential. And by the time Theo wins a second title, we're not necessarily talking about, Dan Duquette's team and Dan Duquette's legacy. We're talking about Dan Duquette's worst quote of all time, most days in first place. And so I say that to say that always happens. Different sports too. The Celtics, they don't win a title under Brad Stevens if they don't have Danny Ainge before. And they probably don't win a title if they don't have Brad Stevens in the seat right now. So that stuff aside, you look at what this team is this year, and it's got Chaim Bloom written all over it. And unlike the Dan Duquette thing, you've got another about 8 to 10 years of Chaim Bloom written all over it. Did Chaim Bloom get a raw deal by getting fired by the Red Sox at the end of the 23 season? Yes, he did. I said it at the time. I stick by it. I don't hate Breslow. I think Breslow's made some good moves. But absolutely, Chaim Bloom got a raw deal. He came in as a wunderkind, right? And his first order of business is to trade the best player on the team, trade the future Hall of Famer, trade the best player in baseball, Mookie Betts. Oh, and by the way, there's maybe like 2 or 3 teams that can afford him. One of them is your biggest rival that's also in the division. And so you're going to have no leverage. He's got 1 year left on his contract. Whoever trades for him is going to want to extend him, and there's only a few teams that can afford to do that. So good luck. Go with God, Chaim Bloom. And look what happened. He didn't get a great return. Wow. Connor Wong's the only guy left, and he stinks. Who could have seen that coming? Anybody could have seen that coming. But you bring in Chaim Bloom in year one. You've got the Mookie Betts trade. You've got COVID, and you've got a problem already with ownership that doesn't want to spend money. At that point, they're already over the luxury tax. There's all these rumors about the Fenway Sports Group not wanting to put out, premium top dollar for the best players. And that was correct. It continued on for years to the point where a lot of us were killing Craig Breslow last year and the first part of this offseason. What's the constant there between these two GMs? The same ownership, the same money bags. And now there's all these stories about, John Henry's reverse course. He misses when the team was good. He likes being, at the top and getting the best players, and he likes the excitement at Fenway again. Where was that when Chaim was the GM? Because here you had a brilliant baseball mind that knew how to work on a budget, and so you brought him in to work on a budget. And it was bullshit. They didn't give him much of a chance in those 3 to 4 years there. 4 years, I guess. They didn't give him a chance. Not a real one. He got the checkbook one time, really. And it wasn't a great signing, Trevor Story, right? He didn't have an injury history at that point, but he has one now. And so that's a tough one to judge a GM on. It wasn't Pablo Sandoval being out of shape or Carl Crawford just forgetting how to play baseball. It was a guy who just suddenly gets hurt, and it looks like a bad deal, and it is. But you look at the roster now and what it's going to be in the near future, that's Chaim Bloom, brother. This guy who is knocking the shit out of the baseball in the first week and a half of the season, Wilyer Abreu, who's this revelation. Chaim Bloom traded half a season of Christian Vasquez for Wilyer Abreu team controlled Wilyer Abreu. I think the Red Sox won that deal. I think Chaim Bloom won that deal. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or how about the kid Christian Campbell, huh? Wonder who discovered him in the 4th round of the draft. Oh, yeah, Chaim Bloom. Or how about this number 1 prospect in baseball that's ready to come up any day as the future of your franchise? Comp pick because he made a good move in letting Xander Bogaerts walk and take a deal that's going to take him through age 40 to be the shortstop in San Diego. Everyone was killing him for it at the beginning. You remember that? Oh, they should have signed him to an extension earlier. You already picked Xander Bogaerts over Mookie Betts, and I don't think that was a great move. I love Xander Bogaerts, great player, and still was till the end of his time in Boston. But that was the right move to let him walk, and you got a comp pick out of it that becomes the number 1 prospect in baseball. That's Chaim Bloom. And the rest of your farm system, he takes over, and they are so far removed from being a good farm system. They're 30th in everything, but it was so bad, you might as well have had him 31st. Team A at 29th, blank space 30th, Red Sox 31st. Because that's what Dave Dombrowski does. He got your farm system, you won a World Series. Chaim Bloom comes into that to then 1 year after he's gone. They have the best trio of position player prospects that any team has had in a generation. Chaim Bloom did that. By the way, Marcelo Mayer, the 3rd guy in that trio, Chaim Bloom, that was one of his best picks, and it was just by not overthinking it. Everyone wanted Jack Leiter. I wanted Jack Leiter. I cussed in a public place when I saw that the Rangers picked Jack Leiter a pick ahead of the Red Sox. And Chaim Bloom looks at it and says, you know what? The best player projected in this draft was Marcelo Mayer. Shocked he didn't go number 1. He's there at number 4. Pick him. And here he is. 1 step from the majors. Him and Roman Anthony just tearing it up in the minor leagues. So yeah, Chaim Bloom did get a raw deal by going into a shit sandwich of a situation and having to trade the best player in baseball. Having an ownership group that wasn't ready to spend money at that time, was going to be as cheap as holy hell, and for them to fire him before they opened the checkbook up again. Because a year of Craig Breslow, another guy who they really like, one of their own, they look and they say, we're not getting any better. Maybe our general manager needs some money to spend. And I'm glad that it happened when it did, or that it happened at all. But it does suck that that did not happen for Chaim Bloom, because I really believed in what Chaim Bloom was doing. Again, was it all perfect? No. Corey Kluber, for example, didn't love that. Or just the fact that he didn't necessarily work out a good enough bullpen over his time with the team, especially in like 2022. The Kike Hernandez extension, didn't like that from the beginning. The Masa Yoshida deal doesn't look too great right about now. But, you got some great value out of guys like Kenley Jansen, out of Chris Martin, out of Justin Turner. I didn't like that you let him walk. You obviously had the great deal for Wilyer Abreu. We were killing him at the time for the Hunter Renfroe for Jackie Bradley deal, which wasn't great at the end of the day. But you look at Hunter Renfroe, it's a guy who plays for a new team every year. Clearly, there's something up there. So even the bad deals, you have to take into context. Like that one, Hunter Renfroe going a new place every season, or the Mookie Betts deal of you had zero leverage. So you can find all kinds of very easy context clues on the surface for why the Chaim Bloom bad deals weren't as bad as we thought. And again, I like Craig Breslow too, not as much as I liked Chaim, but he pulled off a pretty good deal yesterday for Quinn Priester, a guy we traded for last year, but one that wasn't going to fit into this rotation, right? He got plenty of chances in spring training, didn't work out. You had to go down to starters 6 and 7 anyway, and you took a flyer on Sean Newcomb and liked him better than Quinn Priester. And Richard Fitz looks like a guy who's going to be a a pivotal part of your rotation going forward, no matter what the injuries are for the other starters. So you were able to flip that guy for a top 10 prospect in the Brewers system, a player to be named later, and some cash for a team with the worst ERA in the league. You kind of held them over a barrel. Worst ERA in the league. They're terrible, this pitching staff. And you've got a guy that you're like, he might be a major leaguer. But to you, he's a lot better than what you've got right now. How about that 19-year-old top 10 prospect in your system? And maybe we'll give credit to Breslow in a couple of years for building up some of these guys at the lower level of the system. You know, a guy like Juan Valera, I believe was him, but it could have been the end of Chaim Bloom. But you look at the guys that are ready to make an impact on the roster right now, and the guys you are extending right now, Chaim Bloom, baby. Cedar Rafaela, Chaim Bloom. Brian Bayo, Chaim Bloom. Christian Campbell, Chaim Bloom. And some of the other mainstays in your everyday lineup, like picked out and developed through Chaim Bloom's system. Wilyer Abreu, more or less, right? He was still a minor leaguer when you traded for him for maybe the best deal of the decade if Wilyer continues anywhere near this pace. Tristan Casas, it's a Chaim Bloom guy. He's up on your everyday roster, batting cleanup, right? I have no doubt Chaim Bloom would have made a deal for Garrett Crochet, which also factors into Chaim Bloom because you had the prospects to trade for Garrett Crochet because Chaim drafted them. He drafted Kyle Teel in the first round. Okay? You had that kind of flexibility because of Chaim Bloom. I also don't doubt that Chaim Bloom would have gotten a guy like Alex Bregman if he had the money available, but he didn't. So now Craig Breslow is going to look way better. But this is all going to show, and you'll see it for the next 8 to 10 years, that Chaim Bloom did get a raw deal. And I wish him well in St. Louis, but if that becomes a team that is a force to be reckoned with for years to come, you can only look inward for letting that guy go. But Craig Breslow is going to get by, at least in the early days, by locking up Chaim Bloom's guys for 8 to 10 years. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Did Chaim Bloom get a raw deal here? Should he still be the general manager of the Boston Red Sox? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Cam Stuart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air 5 days a week, talking nothing but Boston sports. Check out the other videos on the channel, talking the Red Sox and all the other teams. Again, live on YouTube, high noon every weekday, and then wherever you get your podcasts.